have found this thing that is so beautifully changed my noisy monkey chattering brain around food. And I want every woman who's lived like I have for 61 years to have the opportunity to try this and see if it works with their body. And then to be able to stay on it and not have to take out a mortgage. $1,000 a month is obscene.
Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. So today we're going to be talking about something that honestly, I actually got called out a little bit from you guys, and you're right. So I've made a few videos talking about Ozempic, Mounjaro, all of the weight loss medications that have been out, and most of them have been talking about people that have had bad experiences with them. And so people were kind of saying like, man, you're always talking about the negatives. Why aren't you talking about the positives? And that is completely fair. I think in my head, the reason I was talking about the negatives is that most of the media that you see is talking about how this is helping so many people, and it absolutely is. This is why I've always said I'm not at all against these medications. And so this video that we're going to be doing today is going to be talking about a positive, and it's going to be someone that is pretty well known, that is someone that has been struggling with their weight their entire life, right? So we're going to be talking about Rosie O'Donnell. She recently went on a podcast that I think kind of just talks about being overweight, being plus size, and she kind of talked about her experience with the drug and how it has helped her. And so, you know, this is going to be more positive about it because I do understand that I have been focusing on the negatives. You know, it's not because I hate the drug or anything like that. It's just, I do still think it's important. Like, yes, there are positives, but with anything like that, there are going to be negatives, you know, in and of itself. So, but without further ado, let's get into this interview that she had with this podcast. So this is the video right here. Episode 13, Rosie O'Donnell shows up for weight loss medication. And this is it right here. So let's go ahead and watch it.
That when I went to the doctor, I moved out here 2 years ago. I had to get new doctors. And this one doctor said, "You are pre-diabetic." I said, "I know, but they've been telling me that for 10 years. And she said, "Yeah, but you 7.0 is the cutoff and you're 6.9 or something like that." She said, "I would rather treat it now than wait and see what happens." And I already was a type 2, you know, right on the borderline diabetic. So in about September of last year, she gave me what she said, "Would you take a shot?" I'm like, you know, I haven't taken shots, but I'm sure I could. So she gave me that and something else called Repatha, which I don't think has anything to do with weight loss. I have to take that once. That's something with my heart, I think. But I have to take that once every other week. And I take Mounjaro every Thursday. So I didn't.
Okay. And so with Rosie, it's clear that this was Rosie O'Donnell. This was something that it was because of, you know, diabetes. There was no, it's not like she was going into it because she wanted to lose weight, which is definitely different than a lot of people that are going into this medication. And so I just thought that was really, really interesting. And then also like the whole, like she's pre-diabetic and being like, "Oh, I've heard that forever," because when I was younger, that's what I was told. Like I was like pre-diabetic, and I just remember thinking, well, I'm not diabetic, so we're all good.
Started till December.
Oh, okay.
I kind of like, nobody was talking about it then in September. I had seen the Ozempic, but I didn't really know what it was for or think anything about it. And so on December 16th, I take the shot and I go with my son and he gets engaged. And I knew it was happening and it was very emotional. And I never, I just was so emotional. I was very crying during we saw a musical after him and his fiance, and it was Phantom, and it was great. And
congratulations!
Crying a lot. And then I went to Nobu, which is my favorite sushi restaurant in the world. And normally I can eat there. I couldn't eat anything, and I thought it was because I was upset. Right? I didn't think. When she told me, this doctor who's wonderful, when she told me, "We're going to do this to get your A1C down," I said, okay. She never mentioned weight loss. And I wasn't in the world of it yet. So after about 10 days where I noticed I wasn't eating so much, but, you know, I wasn't sure, I get on the scale and I lost like 9 pounds.
Gosh,
so I go right away to I have a terminal illness.
Yeah.
Right? I told my doctor, I'm like, them.
So that is like what I think is the thing that is so powerful about these medications is how much it can help with that, right? Because I think any of us that have struggled with our weight for any amount of time, to think that you're not even trying really to lose weight and then it's just coming off, like for those of us that have struggled with weight, that maybe have food addictions, that know what it's like to just constantly feel like you're thinking about food, you're thinking about your next meal or what you're gonna eat next, what you're gonna drink next, what, like to just lose weight without even trying is like, you hear that, you know, I know so many people that get so annoyed when people talk about how they struggle to gain weight and that like if they don't pay attention to it, they just lose weight. And like to feel like so many people I know think to themselves, if I could only have that problem, right? If only I could feel that way about weight loss, like they just feel like that's just so not even possible, right? So clearly these weight loss medications almost are able to help people get to that point, right? Where you're able to, you're almost losing weight without trying. Obviously everybody's different, right? But like for Rosie O'Donnell, that is what happened. And that is just, to hear that doesn't sound real, right? But clearly it was. Like, I don't see why she would be saying this if it didn't happen, right? So this is why this stuff is so powerful and why it's helped so many people.
Must be something wrong. I'm not hungry and I lost weight and I don't know what's happening. And she's like, that's the Manjaro. I said, it makes you lose weight? She said, yes. And I was totally unaware, you know?
Yeah.
So I had the vertical gastric sleeve at 50 after I had a heart attack. So probably.
This was crazy when I heard this. I couldn't believe that, right? So Rosie had the VSG, and that wasn't the, you know, the end all be all cure, which is, again, this is why I talk about this stuff, right? I've talked about weight loss surgeries. People will think that they just need to get the surgery and then everything will be hunky-dory. That's clearly not what happened with Rosie. It's clearly not what happens with a lot of people. That's why I don't like when people say like surgeries and even this medication is like an easy way out. There still is work that needs to be done, right? And so it's just, this is like another, you know, thing that shows you that just because someone got weight loss surgery doesn't mean they didn't try or that it was just easy for them to lose weight. They had to put in the work. Yes, these surgeries and these medications make it easier, because if they didn't, why would they exist? Like, I think saying that it doesn't make it easier would be ridiculous, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything, right? And even though I was just talking about how this medication made her lose weight without what she felt was trying, eventually that stuff, you know, you do have to try. It's not like, yeah, the first little bit, just like whenever you get weight loss surgery, the first little bit you'll lose weight without really doing much, but eventually you almost hit like a point where it's like, okay, now I have to actually be trying and learning and picking up new habits and all of that stuff, because that like, fast, super, just like spontaneous weight loss will stop regardless of what intervention it is that you use.
At my heaviest was when I had my heart attack. I don't know, I think I was 240. I don't remember exactly the number, because like at some point, like I remember 227. Remember that show 227?
Yeah, 227.
I
Absolutely.
always told myself, oh my God, I'm 227. And before that, I was Karen Valentine, room 222. So that was sort of my, like, I'm staying in this. I can't go past this.
Yeah.
And when I did, I stopped weighing myself. Well, I had a heart attack. And
That right there, man, that is such... That's what happens, right? And this is what happens a lot of times with people that, like, I think a lot of people that struggle with just their weight in general eventually get to a point where they're just like, I'm done weighing myself, right? I know how that is, because I was the same way. For me, I didn't really weigh myself after once I got over 300, a lot of times just like regular scales would weigh more than that anyways. And so they had like a limit, but then I just didn't want to weigh myself anymore, because I was like, it just makes me sad and it just bummed me out. And so I just like stopped for quite a long time until I started wanting to lose weight. That's why I always say like my heaviest recorded weight is 360, but I really think that I weighed more than that, but I just didn't see a bigger number. But then also, this is something that happens with people that have lost weight that maybe start gaining it back slowly, that eventually you just get to a point where you just stop weighing yourself, right? You kind of put your head in the sand, because it's frustrating and it's like embarrassing, and it just ruins your day. So that's why a lot of times when people, you know, they've lost weight and then they gain it back, they slowly kind of stop weighing themselves or stop doing those things that kind of regulate themselves, because it just is too painful, right? And like, you know, it's understandable. I understand why you would not want to do that anymore. But that's why I think it is a good sign. Like most people that have lost weight and kept it off for a long time, they always are self-regulating in some way, whether that is weighing themselves, maybe not every day, but every so often, or they are, you know, making sure that looking in the mirror, just like they don't put their head in the sand. They make sure that they are aware of their weight. They are aware of these things. And I think that is something that, I think it is something that you kind of have to almost always be aware of. I think, especially if you have struggled with like severe obesity and you're worried about going back to that, I think there will always be a level of weighing yourself to an extent, or at least regulating that. And again, it doesn't have to be weighing yourself every day. I don't weigh myself every day, but I just, you know, every once in a while I'll check in and be like, okay. Luckily, I think for me now where I am, I don't have to rely on the after. I can rely on the habits that I have. Like I know when I'm doing stuff that's probably not the best, right, for like keeping weight off, and I'm not stupid, right? And I can I'll end up weighing myself, and I'm never like, oh my God, I'm so surprised. I can't believe that. Almost never, right? I'm usually like, yeah, that makes sense because of this or of that, right? Sorry, that was a super long tangent.
And I was lucky to survive it. It was the LAD, the Widowmaker, and that was about 10 years ago. I lost about 30 pounds on it. I got down to sort of where I am now, like in the 190s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gained some back, like 10 pounds back, but it definitely was a help for me. And it was the only option at the time. Mm-hmm. So I did it at all of my doctor's requests. And now cut to 10 years later, and they tell me I'm a type 2 diabetic, and I get this shot. The first month or two, I was in shock. I could not believe the effect that it had on my thought process about food. You know, we all of my family, Irish people, you know, potato pulling Irish farmers from the 1700s. That's us. You know, we all have the same kind of body and the same kind of weight issues, but it wasn't, you know, when we were young, it wasn't that way. When my mother was alive, my brother Danny was in husky clothes, which was like a big shame for him.
I remember I had the husky size. I don't know if they still have that for kids, but yeah, I remember I was actually really lucky. I had a school nurse that was like really, really nice, because I used to see her every day, because when I was in elementary school for about a year, I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I took Ritalin for my ADHD. Or it was ADHD. I don't think that's a thing anymore. Or it was ADD. I don't think that's a thing anymore. I think it's all just ADHD. But I used to have to go to her office every day at lunchtime. I would forget all the time. So they would have to call me in, and then I have to go back to her office to take the Ritalin. But so I became like friends with her, and we were really, really poor when I was growing up. I've talked about this. And so I just didn't really have any clothes. And so she actually she would bring in clothes for me, and she would like call me into this is so random. I'm sorry, but whatever. She would call me into her office, and she would have me take the Ritalin, and then she would say, hey, look through those clothes. If there's anything you like, I can save them here, and then you can come pick them up before you go home. And it was just really, really nice of her. Yeah, she was awesome. But yeah, I remember being in husky clothes when I was a kid.
Tells me now. But the rest of us weren't. But after my mother died, we all gained weight, because nobody was there to say, don't eat the Oreos. Nobody was there to be home with us. And we were 5 motherless kids, and we ate what 10-year-olds would eat, right? Left to their own devices. So I think in my life and career, I've always had a weight issue, especially in Hollywood. When I did League of Their Own, I was like 170 pounds. And I remember Penny Marshall going, I want you to lose 10, 15, or 20 pounds. Can you do it? And I said, well, if I could do it, Penn, I would do it, because nobody likes to be obese. Nobody likes people to say to them, you should lose 20 pounds. Nobody, you don't carry it around for fun. You carry it around for reasons that you don't really understand.
Right.
And I thought they were mostly emotional reasons.
Yeah.
But from this medication, I've realized there's a biological component. You know, I always thought that the weight was emotional, and you know, when there was stressful times in my life, you know, like when I started my show, I was probably about 180. That was in 96. And by the time the 6 months were up from when we started in the summer until Christmas, I had gone up to 200. And I remember thinking, Roseanne Barr announced on The Tonight Show when she was under 200 finally. And I remember in my mind thinking, okay, you're as big as Roseanne Barr. Not that that's a horrible thing to be, but I was always smaller than her. And now I was equal to her. And we were both entertainers.
It's so funny hearing that, because I know for myself, I would look at other people and think to myself, and sometimes I would even bring it up to my friends if they were bigger than me, which a lot of times they were not. It was really hard. I would like look and I would like try and find people bigger than me, because like it sounds terrible, but it like made me feel better about myself. But I would like think to myself, oh, hopefully I'll never get to that size, or I'll never get that big. You know, I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing to admit, but it's true. Like I used to compare myself to other people and just be like, oh, I'm not that big. If I get that big, that would be a problem. You know. Both
named Rosie, both in show business, both comedians. Yeah. So it was easy to be mistaken for her, and to sort of categorize myself with plus size women for the first time, because I always bordered Gap and Lane Bryant. Yeah, I was like not fit enough for the Gap, but I could fit in the XL. And I was not fat enough for Lane Bryant. In fact, I used to make a joke that sometimes in the mall I'd go into Lane Bryant and they'd say, "We have nothing here that could fit you." And I go, "Oh, thank you. I'll go."
Thank you so much.
You know, exactly. like, oh, look at me. Okay. But it's a silly thing to think that, the plus size wardrobe community, or lack thereof, was only really one place that we could go. It's different now.
Yeah.
It has evolved quite a bit. Yeah.
But I have been on it since December 16th, and I've lost almost 30 pounds, like 29 pounds. But I am on 2.5 because of my gastric sleeve.
Yeah.
So my doctor, she said, your stomach is much smaller than people who've not had this surgery. So the amount of stuff that you need, the stuff that's in there, is less than most people. And if you have no side effects and you are not suffering, I'm not suffering at all. I think that this is a miracle drug. Yes. It's a miracle drug. I tell people the truth. My children learned very early to hide their candy at Halloween. Yeah, and from November 1st until Christmas, every night before I went to sleep, all I thought was, there's a Butterfinger in here somewhere. And all I got to do is find it, right? I couldn't stop myself. Like you hear people talking about the first time they smoked meth or the first time they took heroin, they thought, I am never not going to do this. Well, that's how I feel about Mounjaro. Not only does it really regulate your A1C, I went from a 7 down to a 5.1 or a 5.2. Now I know I'm privileged and white and rich, and I have a lot of things that most people in the world don't have access to. And I have the financial ability to pay, although because I'm diabetic, my insurance does cover it. But I called my agent after about 4 months on this, and I said, could you call Eli Lilly and tell them.
So Eli Lilly is the people that make the drug that she's taking.
That I would be willing to be their spokesperson for free if they would still provide the coupons. I don't even want to be paid. I just want to be able to go out there and say, this will change your life. It's changed mine. Now, I haven't lost, like some people go on there and whether they admit it or not, including some celebrities, where you look at them and go, I don't know who you think you're fooling, but nobody goes from looking how you did to looking how you are without this medication or this help. Yeah.
So this is the part that really spoke to me and made me be like, I want to talk about this, and especially her in general, right? Because one, I think it shows that there's a genuine like appreciation for the drug. And then it also it's frustrating, and I can understand the people that are frustrated with others that are just kind of taking it because they have a little bit of weight they want to lose. And the fact that is causing shortages, and now it's become like hard to get for certain people. It's you know, it's a struggle. And so I can understand why people are frustrated with that. But Rosie clearly has had such a profound, like, good experience with this drug that it, like, she's willing to, you know, become the spokesperson for free, which, I mean, I don't know how much. I'm assuming those jobs can probably pay quite a bit of money, but the fact that she's like, I'm fine with not taking any, it's clear, at least, you know, from an outsider, I've never met her, but it seems that she is genuinely like a fan of it, and it's really has changed her life. And so I just felt like it was so important to share this.
No one
Tell
will.
it, Rosie.
You know, people used to say about Oprah, they used to say, she's so rich, why doesn't she just hire somebody to punch the food out of her hands, you know?
100%. I used to think that all the time. I used to think like, oh man, if I just had more money, right, it would be so much easier to lose weight because I could just pay for a chef and blah, 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 right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say having more money and more options and more, you know, like, ways to get a hold of certain things, that definitely, I would say, makes things easier. But I think it just goes to show, like, even if someone has all of those, you know, all of those things in their wheelhouse and they could do all of those things, it doesn't mean that automatically it just changes stuff and you're all of a sudden have no issues, right? And so, you know, Oprah, they're basically almost like the richest woman in the world, one of, the fact that she struggles with her weight, I think it shows that, like, there's more to it than just, you know, the economic status you come from. But that's not to say that it has nothing to do with it. I think it definitely plays quite a big role. But yeah.
Like that she was so, why could Oprah Winfrey have a weight problem when she's the richest, most successful woman in the world? Because that's not what it's about. It's about your genes, it's about your biology, it's about nurturing and ways that you compensate with food, you know, ways that you emotionally satiate yourself with food. I have a chef because I took a year to get healthy, and I hired a chef, and she's amazing, and she makes me calorie appropriate and protein appropriate meals. And sometimes I still love the meal. This is what people say to me. So you're not interested in food? I go, I'm not interested in snacks. I used to have snacks a lot.
Very good point.
If there were cookies at my house, warm cookies, I would eat them. In fact, when Kelly and I, my ex-wife, when we started dating, the first time she came to my house, I had made Nestle's Toll House cookies and they were still warm. And she never had a weight problem at all. And so she came in and I said, would you like a cookie? And she said, no, I'm not hungry. And I said, you don't have to be hungry to have a cookie, you know?
Cookies are not about hungry.
Like, well, I better watch this one. She's got some sneaky ideas, you know? Because I can't believe that somebody wouldn't want a cookie. And I think back to times in my life, like when I first did The Tonight Show, everybody else backstage was worrying about what they were going to say, what the interview was going to be like. And I was trying not to eat the brownie in the craft service table.
Dude, that is so, I can relate to that so much, especially like there's been, you know, when I was bigger and you go to these public events, whether it's something like that or it's just like a party, and it's hard not to just become like, I'd become so focused on the food and like, when are we going to eat? What are we going to have? Are we going to be able to have this? Blah, blah, blah. But then like, I always had to play this game of like wanting to, like, obviously I was very excited about the food, but also knowing that people were probably judging me based on, like, they were probably looking at how much I ate, right? They were probably, and so like, I remember like we always had a lot of people over at my house for Thanksgiving, and I would always like try and put on this big show of like, I haven't eaten anything all day, so I'm going to have whatever I want, basically, just so I could like try and like shift some of that, like what I felt like judgment away from me, because I'm like, well, I haven't eaten anything at all day, and it's 4 or 5, and so I'm just going to have whatever I want. If I want to have 2 plates or 3 plates or 4 plates, whatever, I'm going to have that because I haven't eaten all day, right? But I would just like all day I'd be thinking about the pie and the turkey and the ham and the gravy, and like I couldn't, like, now I will say that like it has gotten easier, and I've never taken any of these drugs or anything like that. I do believe that you can, I don't want to say fix, but like there are ways to mitigate that feeling without taking these drugs. And I've always said that like that should be the first thing you go down. And hopefully you have tried that many times before you take any sort of, other, intervention, whether that's pills, injections, a surgery. I think it's important to try on your own because I do think it's possible. Clearly it's very difficult and not everyone can do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think you should be trying everything before you go to the next extreme, right?
I was sitting there not worrying about my first national television experience. I was worrying that I really wanted to eat the brownie and I couldn't. And it was the only thing I thought about before I went out on that stage. Food noise, as people are calling it, had really run my life. And I didn't even know it until I took Manjaro.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I agree.
So I would love to.
That's huge. And so for me, that's why I am not against these medications. I think that is so powerful because I know exactly what it feels like to have that food noise, right? I know what that's like. And I know when that's why I get so frustrated when people are like, just eat less, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, yes, that is technically true, but just because something is technically true, that does not mean that it's easy or that, something that might seem so simple to someone that's never had a weight issue is just not the same for someone that's been struggling with their weight their entire life. It's just not the same at all.
To be able to try to get Eli Lilly to make compassionate use for this drug.
Yes.
They're going now, apparently, they're going to do it for obesity as well, which they really should. And I also think it could help anyone with addiction.
Yes.
Because any
Those
kind of
studies are there. Yeah.
because I find that I don't really want to drink either.
Yes.
And I'm not thinking like I used to, because I was on every diet there was. I even did fen back in the 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
We
We did your chub club at work.
Exactly. I did the chub club and gained weight, but
Yeah,
I
we did
never an answer for me. And any fix that I got, I knew it was temporary. Well, all I think about this drug is I want to be on it the rest of my life. And I don't care if it.
That's important. That's important that she says that, because I do think that this is one of, when I talk about I don't want to say negatives, but things that people should know about it, is that most of the time, if you're going to be taking this, it is similar to a blood pressure medication. I use that example because my friend Spencer Nadolsky, who's a doctor that prescribes these kind of medications, he'll use that example, right? If you have struggles with your blood pressure, you're usually on that drug forever, right? And so that's how you should look at any of these drugs, right? And that's why I'm not a huge fan of the clinics that you can just go in and get a shot every once in a while, because these are things that you need to be on chronically. You have to stay on it, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that is just a true thing that is important for you to understand. So if you do go down this road, you can't think that, I'm going to take this drug for a little bit until I lose the weight and then I'll get off of it. You can do that, but most likely you're just going to gain the weight back, right? And so it's very, 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 very important that if you decide to go down this road, at least now where we are with the drug, who knows, maybe they make something that you don't have to stay on it for the rest, but right now you have to stay on it. And so if that is not something you're comfortable with, this might not be for you, and that's something you really have to understand. Very, very important.
It's still 2.5. I don't care if I only lose a pound a week. I don't gain on this. And gaining was a big problem. So some people have said, well, you only lost 28 pounds since December. That's only, I go, right. And in a year, it's 60.
Yeah.
In a year, it's 60 pounds. And I'm halfway through the year. Now, some people say you should go up to 5.0. But I'm listening to my doctor. I feel very good. I have not had one side effect besides the first week when I couldn't eat. I felt like I thought I was going to get sick, but I wasn't necessarily nauseous, but I just felt like, what's going on, And aside from that, I've had 0 side effects.
So that's the part that I wanted to show you. Obviously, it's an hour-and-a-half podcast. I'll link it down in the description. But I really wanted to share Rosie's experience because I do think it's important. And like I said, people have pointed out that I've been talking about the negatives. That's fair. I totally understand where you're coming from. And so I think, like I've always said, my goal with my channel and the things that I talk about is I want people to be successful. And so if this helps someone lose weight, that's awesome. But just understand with anything, any sort of intervention, even if you're losing weight without taking anything, right, there are going to be side effects from that. Like, especially if you try to lose weight too quickly. That's why I'm against that as well, right? And so I thought this was a really cool story, and one that shows, the humanity of Rosie, but also it just shows how much this really has changed her life, and why I hope that people don't think that I'm some like anti medication or anti-surgery. I try to be a realist, and just like when things are touted as like, oh, this is a miracle, it's like, yes, like these things are really great, but there are side effects, and it's important that people are aware of them before they go down that road. But just because there are side effects, I don't want to dissuade anyone from taking something that might change their life and might even save their life, right? And so I just wanted to share that. I thought it was a really cool story. I appreciate y'all so much for watching the video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next time. Peace.